Live from downtown Detroit, home of WDIV and Click on Detroit, Local 4 News at 6 starts now.
Oxford Strong. It's a community rallying around the students at Oxford High School, and it's the right use of the word, strong, as we're learning about the bravery on display in that building.
If you ask anyone from Oxford, Tate would be the guy to go after the gunman. He would be the one to save everyone's lives, like put everyone's lives before his.
And we got more heartbreaking news today as a fourth student has died. The suspected shooter is now charged with 4 counts of murder and terrorism.
We want to keep our focus on the victims of this horrific tragedy, and those are the names you will hear today.
And we are talking to the people who knew those students best and looking into how schools work to keep your students safe.
Let's begin with the major new developments in the school shooting that has shaken all of Metro Detroit. A 4th student, as we said off the top, has now died. That's 17-year-old Justin Schilling. 4 other students remain in the hospital at this hour. 2 students and a teacher have been discharged. The suspect in the shooting has been identified as 15-year-old Ethan Crumbly. Sheriff's office says he fired more than 30 shots and that he also had 18 live rounds of ammunition left. Sheriff Mike Bouchard says he was on the school's radar.
We have since learned that the schools did have contact with the student the day before and the day of the shooting for behavior in the classroom that they felt was concerning. In fact, the parents were brought in the morning of the shooting and had a face-to-face meeting with the school. The content of that meeting obviously is part of the investigation.
Suspect did appear in court just a short time ago and was charged, as promised, as an adult.
He's facing 4 counts of first-degree murder, 7 counts of assault with intent to murder, 1 count of terrorism. Investigators say he planned the shooting and made a video talking about carrying it out. Prosecutor Karen McDonald wouldn't say if the victims were targeted. She was asked, though, why she decided to add a terrorism charge.
What about all these other children? What about all the children who ran, screaming, hiding under desks? What about all the children at home right now who can't eat and can't sleep and can't imagine a world where they could ever foot back in that school? Those are victims too, and so are their families, and so is the community. And the charge of terrorism reflects that.
He was denied bond and is being transferred from Children's Village to the Oakland County Jail. The prosecutor says more charges could be coming against him, and she's considering charges against his parents.
And like Karen McDonald, we want to focus on the young lives that were cut too short.
17-year-old Justin Schilling was a co-captain of the Oxford bowling team and a golfer.
HANA St. Juliana, 14-year-old volleyball player and basketball player. Her family says the best word to describe HANA is joyful.
17-year-old MADISYN Baldwin was a talented artist, big sister. She loved to read and write.
16-year-old Tate Meir was an honor student and a talented athlete. Tate was a junior on the football team, and tonight nearly 70,000 people have signed a petition to rename the school's stadium after him.
We're hearing from his friends who say he was funny, respectful, and would do anything for anyone. Karen Drew is live tonight. Karen, they're not just sharing their loss, but they're also taking us through what went on inside that school as well.
Yeah. I was able to sit down with Olivia and Miranda. They are friends of Tate's, and they said they wanted to talk because they wanted to talk about Tate. They wanted to talk about how special he was, how funny he was, how kind he was. They grabbed their phones. They were going through the pictures, telling me stories of what a leader he was. And as they were looking at those pictures, of course, it brought them back to memories of yesterday.
And everyone is just screaming, run. So I ran, like, pretty far, probably farther than I should have.
16-year-old Olivia Dare was walking back from lunch when she heard the gunshot.
I just kind of like yelled at my teacher, like, school shooter, school shooter. He did not even doubt me for a sec. He went straight to the door, locked it, barricaded it, sent another student to the other door.
At the same time, her friend, 16-year-old Miranda Wanimko, was doing the same thing a few halls away.
We have the night lock that Oxford has right next to our doors, so we put the night lock in the door, and I just grab desks and I put them along the door, just trying to fit as many as possible, and then we all run to the corner.
Little did they know, their childhood friend and football star, Tate Meir, had been shot in the hallway and was bleeding out.
If you ask anyone from Oxford, Tate would be the guy to go after the gunman. He would be the one to save everyone's lives, like put everyone's lives before his.
Time passed, texts exchanged. No one heard from Tate.
When did you know there could have been something wrong with Tate?
I was in the car on my way home with my dad, and he was like, hey, you should call Tate, like no one can find Tate. So I called Tate, he didn't answer, so I thought his phone may have died or he just ran somewhere else.
Then they got news. Tate had died.
Tate was just one of those guys that would literally do anything for anyone. Everyone just loved him.
He's such a funny kid. All parents respected him. He was so respectful, so funny, super athletic, just the guy that you would want to be around.
A day after, friends are retracing their steps and remembering Tate's.
Tate was in the courtyard with his girlfriend, and they were splitting up. So his girlfriend was going to a class this way. He was going to the class this way, walking through physics, and that's when it happened.
That's when it happened. It was a hard interview, sitting down talking with those young children, and that's what's important to say in the story. They are children that are dealing with this. They do say they felt like they had the training from the school, but they did mention while they were prepared that training they got was actually from middle school. They had no practice sessions in their high school, and that was a little bit concerning. I did ask them, do you think you're going to feel comfortable going back to school? And they said, no, not right now. They can't envision going back, and of course I don't think anybody could at this point. It's just too early to imagine. Devin, Kim, back to you.
Yeah, what a difficult conversation I know that must have been to have with those girls, Karen, but so thankful that they shared their memories of Tate with us. We really appreciate it.
The sheriff said it had probably been before COVID since the last time they had done the training at the school, so probably some had not been in the school for it at that time. And also today, Sheriff's Office tried to clear up what they say is a lot of misinformation that's been circulating in the community.
That's right. Sean Lay is at the high school tonight getting answers to the questions a lot of parents are asking.
A mom and dad overcome with emotion at Oxford High School today. Other parents are angry, believing concerns about a possible shooting were ignored. Sheriff Michael Bouchard helping us determine why some parents feel that way. In mid-November, a post to social media indicating that someone wanted to shoot up a school got shared multiple times around Oxford High School. School officials and sheriff's investigators were alerted.
We were part of that investigation. We determined that it was somebody in a different state and had nothing to do not only with this school district but the state.
That investigation prompted the school administration on November 12th to put out this email reading, quote, "We are aware of numerous rumors that have been circulating throughout our building this week," saying no threat was made to Oxford High School. Parents are pointing to the email as a red flag for yesterday's shooting, but the sheriff says so far they have found no red flags related to yesterday.
Then a letter went out from the school saying there was a threat. It was not credible because it had nothing to do with this school. And some people have cross-pollinated those two things.
So why did some kids stay home yesterday?
Nothing came to us about a credible threat yesterday or about kids being held home. But tragically, you know, we've got a lot of very concerned parents all over the place.
Absolutely, and as those questions continue, all of us, of course, thinking about Oxford and, of course, HANA, Madisyn, Tate, and now, of course, Justin. But we got so many questions about this email from November 12th. The sheriff now debunking the email, saying it has nothing to do with the shooting. But guys, to put the threats in social media in perspective, the sheriff says his investigators have had to track down 3 different threats in the last week, all in that same area that turned out to be really nothing when they went to that. But they're spending so much time on the social media threats.
Life in 2021, exactly right. All right, Sean. Now, as we mentioned a moment ago, students sadly are trained for situations like this, and some of that training was on display in a video that showed us the intensity, I think you'd say, of the moment.
Yeah, it really was. And Paula Tutman gives us an inside look at the active shooter training and a safety measure that many schools do not implement.
Since Columbine, even communities that say,
you never think it's going to happen here,
prepare for it to happen here. At Oxford High School yesterday, experts who've watched video from inside panicked classrooms say it is clear many of the students were specifically trained in active shooter protocols. Chief Mark Gordon, the police chief for Oakland University, does active trainer shooting called Run, Hide, Fight.
We know training works from previous shooting incidents that have occurred, that when you train to a specific goal, it is recalled quicker. You cannot make up preparedness. You cannot make up a response, an appropriate response during an emergency. You have to have training, and there has to be a memory of what you're supposed to do.
There are different kinds of training. You often hear of ALICE training, which is an acronym for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, Evacuate. Last night, our Devin Skillion talked to the CEO of ALICE training.
What we try and educate and train on is how to survive and bridge that gap between the first shot and when help arrives.
But while schools put on active shooter training and lock doors and institute buzz-ins as safety protocols for daily school life, many superintendents I spoke to today say that the often talked about metal detectors at the front doors, well, that conversation is usually a non-starter. And even Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard says he doesn't believe metal detectors work, even though you can often find them in urban, inner-city public school settings, along with other safety protocols.
Most schools in America don't have metal detectors, and most schools in America will never face a tragedy like this. And there's a trade-off, in terms of the environment and the feel and the nature of that.
The question is, what is the tipping point where that might change outside urban settings? Because what many superintendents have told me off camera is that community pushback in many rural and suburban school districts is severe for the idea of metal detectors because of a mindset, often more so than just the money set back.
It is a mindset. It's very, very much a mindset. So I think a mindset should be first and the budget to support it should be second, but it doesn't always occur that way.
So I've been talking to a lot of educators and experts about this, and basically they all agree that if you don't get complete community buy-in for metal detectors for whatever reason, it will become less of a money thing and more of a never gonna happen thing. Paula Tutman, Local 4.
Okay, Paula, thank you. Oxford Strong. You're probably seeing these ribbons all over social media and around town. A
way for our entire community to show support and come together. A memorial outside the high school is growing with people placing flowers and stuffed bears and candles near the sign. There are signs around town and blue and yellow ribbons tied around trees. And then there's this man who came out just holding a sign reading, "Oxford, we support you." And in fact, we all stand with Oxford tonight. More news coming up after the break.
And Paul's tracking the forecast, Paul.
Yeah, Storm Tracker 4 is showing that all of the rain that we've had in the late afternoon, that's moving out. So we have a dry evening ahead with temperatures in the upper 30s. And then we have a quick hit at 50 degrees tomorrow. We'll talk about that straight ahead.
An advisory panel has recommended Merck's COVID-19 pill for emergency use, but by a very narrow margin. I'm Dr. Frank McGeorge. Coming up, why experts are split on whether the risk outweighs the benefit and what happens next for this new potential treatment.